The champagne was still cold when my mother walked through the door I had not opened for her. I was standing at the floor-to-ceiling window of my penthouse, 22 floors above the Chicago skyline, watching the lights blur into something that almost looked like peace. The launch party was winding down. My team had gone home with full glasses and full hearts. The apartment still smelled like fresh flowers and catered food, and I had just taken off my heels and poured myself one last glass to mark the night privately, the way I always celebrated the things that mattered most, alone, quietly, in the dark. I had just closed the first real funding round for my company. $4 million. 4 years of 7-day weeks. Of ramen at midnight. Of explaining to people who didn't believe in me why they were wrong. $4 million and my name on a term sheet that meant I would never have to ask anyone for anything again. That was when the elevator opened. I heard her voice before I turned around. That specific tone warm on the surface, with something calculated moving underneath it. The way a river looks calm right before the current pulls you under. She said my name the way she always said it when she wanted something. Like it was a greeting and a negotiation at the same time. Claire. I turned around slowly. My mother was standing in my living room in a blazer I didn't recognize, with her hair done the way she only did it when she was trying to impress someone. Behind her was my brother. He was wearing a button-down that was slightly wrinkled, and he had the particular expression on his face that I had come to recognize over a lifetime, the look of a man who had made a mess and arrived expecting someone else to clean it up. I had not spoken to either of them in 4.5 years. I want to be precise about that number, because my mother would tell you it was a mutual distance, a drifting apart, the kind of quiet estrangement that just happens between busy people. That is not what happened. What happened was specific, and it had a date, and I remember every detail of it the way you remember the moment a bone breaks, not the pain that came after, but the exact second you heard the sound. I was 24 years old when I told my mother I was leaving my corporate job to start my own company. I had saved for 2 years. I had a co-founder, a prototype, and a business plan I had rewritten 17 times. I was terrified and certain in equal measure, which is the only honest way to begin something real. My mother looked at my business plan across the kitchen table and told me I was being selfish. Not naive, not reckless, selfish. Because my brother had just gotten accepted to a graduate program he couldn't afford, and the plan, apparently the plan that no one had told me about, was that I would stay in my corporate job and help fund his tuition. That had been the plan for a while. My income, his future. I was the responsible one, which in my family's language meant I was the one whose goals were optional. I said no. Clearly, directly, without apology. My mother said that if I walked away from a stable salary to chase something foolish, I was on my own. I said okay. I picked up my business plan. I walked out of that kitchen, and I drove back to my apartment, and I sat on my bathroom floor for about 40 minutes, and then I got up, and I kept going. I kept going through the first year when the prototype failed, and we had to rebuild from scratch. I kept going through the second year when my co-founder left, and I had to restructure the entire cap table. I kept going through the third year when I was running the company on consulting income and had not taken a salary in 11 months. I kept going through the fourth year when we finally found product market fit and the inbound interest started arriving faster than I could return calls. My mother did not call once during any of those years. My brother texted me on my birthday twice. The first time was a GIF. The second time, he asked if I could Venmo him for a flight. I did not respond to either message. And then I raised $4 million and hosted a launch party in my penthouse. And apparently that was the kind of news that travels. A mutual family friend, someone my mother had stayed close with, and I had not had seen the announcement on LinkedIn. I found this out later. I would understand soon enough how the information had moved from a public post to my mother standing in my living room without an invitation. I had given her a key once, years ago, for emergencies. I had never taken it back because I had assumed, incorrectly, that a 4-year silence was its own kind of return. You look wonderful, my mother said, moving toward me with the specific confidence of someone who does not believe they need permission to be wherever they are. She hugged me before I could decide whether I wanted her to. She smelled like the perfume she had always worn. And for one involuntary second, I was back in a kitchen I no longer visited. And then I stepped back, and I was in my living room again, 22 floors up, and my hands were steady. "How did you get in?" I said. It was not a question. She heard it correctly. "I still have the key," she said, and she smiled like that was charming. "We came for the party. We wanted to celebrate with you." My brother had walked to the kitchen island and was looking at the remaining catered food the way he had always looked at whatever belonged to me, like he was already calculating how much of it he could take. "The party ended an hour ago," I said. "We got held up," my mother said. She set her purse on my couch and sat down. And the ease of that gesture, the way she settled into my space as if she had spent years in it, told me everything about how she had rehearsed this moment. She was not here to apologize. She was here to skip past the part where she would have to. "Sit down," she said. "Let's catch up. We've missed you." I did not sit down. I am going to tell you something honest about that moment. There was a version of me that wanted to sit down. The version that had driven home from that kitchen 4.5 years ago and spent 40 minutes on a bathroom floor. That version still existed somewhere underneath the person I had become. and she recognized my mother's voice and her perfume and the particular warmth that my mother turned on when she needed it. And some part of me moved toward all of it the way a plant moves toward a light source, automatically, without thinking. I stayed standing. "What do you need?" I said. My mother looked at me with an expression of hurt that I had watched her construct many times. "We don't need anything, Claire. We came to see you. To celebrate. Is that so hard to believe?" My brother had poured himself a glass of my champagne and was leaning against the kitchen island drinking it. "Is that the Veuve?" he asked. "Put it down," I said. He put it down with a small wounded look, and I turned back to my mother and I waited, because I had learned a long time ago that if you stop filling the silence for her, the truth arrives faster. It took about 90 seconds. "Your brother is in some trouble," she said. There it was. She said it the way she always framed things that were his fault passively, as if the trouble had arrived from outside him rather than followed him home from the decisions he made. My brother was 31 years old. He had a graduate degree, partly funded by a loan he had not finished paying, and a series of jobs he had left before they could become careers. He was, in the language my mother used, still finding himself. He had been finding himself for a decade. The search had become expensive. "What kind of trouble?" I said. My mother looked at my brother. My brother looked at his hands. "He got involved in some investment opportunities," my mother said. "That didn't work out the way anyone expected." "Investments," I said. My brother cleared his throat. "It was a trading platform," he said. "A few guys from my gym were doing really well on it, and I put in some money, and then I put in more money, and then he stopped." He rubbed the back of his neck. "It turned out to be a scam. A Ponzi thing. The whole platform collapsed in February." "How much?" I said. He told me. The number was not small. I looked at my mother. She was watching me with the expression she used when she believed she was about to get what she needed. A slight softening around the eyes. A readiness to receive, as if my response was a formality, and the outcome was already decided. "He owes money to people who are not patient," she said. "And the bank won't refinance because of his credit. We've done everything we can on our end." She paused. "You're in a position to help, and family helps family. That's always been our value. I want you to understand the specific shape of what she said. Not please help your brother. Not we know we haven't been there, and we're asking anyway, and we understand if the answer is no." The frame she chose was obligation. Family helps family. As if the previous 4.5 years had not happened. As if the kitchen conversation had not happened. As if she could arrive in my living room and invoke a value system she had applied selectively for as long as I could remember, and I would accept the terms. "Our value," I said. "Claire." Her voice took on a slight edge. "When I left my job," I said, "you told me I was on my own. That was a difficult time. Everyone said things. You didn't say things. You made a choice. You all made a choice. I spent 4.5 years building something real, and neither of you called once to ask how it was going. Not once." I looked at my brother. "The birthday gift doesn't count." My brother had the decency to look at the floor. "We're asking you now," my mother said. Her voice had gone careful. "We're here. Whatever distance there was, we can move past it. But your brother needs help now. And this is the kind of thing that has a timeline." "How long?" I said. 2 weeks, she said. "Maybe less." I walked to the window. I looked out at the city. I thought about 4 years of silence that apparently had a price tag. And I thought about how she had used the word value. And I thought about what I had spent the last 4.5 years learning about the difference between family as a feeling and family as a transaction. Then I thought about something else. I had a lawyer. I had been working with her for 2 years. Through the funding process, through contract negotiations, through everything. Her name was Renata, and she was exceptionally good at her job, and she answered my texts at 11 o'clock at night when I needed her to. I had called her before the launch party, 3 days earlier, because I had been thinking about what I was going to do with a portion of the investment capital that was sitting in a holding account while we finalized certain operational structures. Renata and I had had a very specific conversation about a very specific type of financial instrument. I turned back from the window. "Sit down," I said to both of them. My mother sat down with the look of someone who believes they have won. My brother sat on the edge of the couch. "I need to know exactly who he owes," I said. "Names, amounts, documentation if there is any." My mother's expression shifted into something that looked like relief and calculation at the same time. She opened her purse. What followed was approximately 40 minutes of my brother explaining, in pieces, the full architecture of what he had gotten into. I asked specific questions. I took notes on my phone. My mother kept interjecting with softening language. It was an honest mistake. He was taken advantage of. The important thing is moving forward, and each time I let her finish, and then asked my next question. By the end, I had a clear picture. The total debt was distributed across 3 parties. One was a legitimate private loan from someone my brother actually knew, documented, and legally straightforward. The other 2 were less formal, which meant they were more urgent and less patient in the way informal creditors tend to be. "I'm going to make some calls," I said. My mother looked at me with something close to warmth. "I knew you would come through," she said. "You always were the one who..." I'm going to make some calls, I said again. And then I'm going to need you both to go home. The calls took 2 days. Renata handled the primary outreach. The 2 informal creditors were, as I had suspected, open to a quick resolution, a discounted payoff in exchange for a clean, documented release of the debt. This is more common than people realize. When an informal creditor believes the alternative is a long and uncertain collection process, a faster resolution at a lower number often looks attractive. We negotiated both down by a combined amount that mattered. The private loan I purchased directly, at a discount, with full legal documentation. I want you to understand what that means. I did not pay off my brother's debt as a gift. I purchased his debt as a financial instrument. When the transaction was complete, my brother no longer owed money to 3 separate parties. He owed money to me. I called my mother on the 3rd day and asked her to come back. I told her I had worked something out. She arrived in my lobby at 2 in the afternoon with my brother, and they both had the loose, relieved posture of people who believe the hard part is over. My mother had brought flowers. She set them on my kitchen island with a smile that said she was ready to let this be the beginning of something repaired. I asked them to sit at the dining table. I sat across from them. I placed a folder in front of my brother. He opened it. He looked at the first page. He looked at me. "What is this?" he said. "It's a promissory note," I said. "Standard terms. You'll see the total amount is slightly lower than the original debt because of the discount on the purchase. The repayment schedule is on page 3. It's structured as a wage garnishment, which makes it cleaner for both of us. Automatic, so you don't have to think about it." My brother's face had gone through several expressions in the span of 10 seconds and had landed on something that looked like he was doing a calculation he didn't want to finish. "You paid off his debt," my mother said slowly, "and now he owes you." "I purchased his debt," I said. "Yes." She looked at me. I watched the warmth drain out of her face in real time, and what was underneath it was older and less managed, and much more honest. "That's not what we came to you for. I know what you came for," I said. "You came because you needed money, and you'd run out of other options. I understand that, but I'm not a bank that makes gifts to people who haven't spoken to me in 4.5 years. I'm a person who spent 4.5 years building something on my own, without support, without a safety net, and I know exactly what it costs to carry a financial obligation forward. Your son will too. Honestly, it'll be good for him." My brother was still looking at the promissory note. He looked like a man reading a document he had no idea how to argue with. "You could have just helped me," he said. "As family. You stopped treating me as family 4.5 years ago," I said. "You reinstated the relationship 12 days ago when you needed something. I'm responding to the version of the relationship that actually exists. Claire." My mother's voice had the edge in it now. Fully out. The one that used to make me recalibrate when I was 22 and needed her approval. "You're being cruel. He's your brother. He made a mistake. You're going to make him pay you back like a transaction." "He is paying back a transaction," I said. "He borrowed money. Now he's borrowed it from me instead of from people who were less patient. The terms are fair. The interest rate is below market. There is no penalty for early repayment." I paused. "I'd suggest he start early." My mother stood up. She had her purse over her arm, and her flowers were still on my kitchen island, and she looked at me with an expression I had never seen from her before. One that had no warmth in it at all. Not even performed warmth. Just the bare architecture of a person who had expected a different outcome and was recalibrating. "You've changed," she said. "Yes," I said. "This isn't who you were." "I know," I said. "I like who I am better." She left without the flowers. My brother signed the promissory note before he left, because Renata had been very clear with me about the order of operations. And I was not my mother. I did not let sentiment interfere with documentation. He signed it at my dining table with a pen I handed him. And he looked up at me once before he signed, and I think he was waiting for me to say something that would change the shape of the moment, to offer him a softer landing. I didn't. He signed it. He stood up. He walked to the elevator without saying anything. After the elevator closed, I stood in my apartment for a while. The flowers my mother had brought were still on the island. They were yellow. She had always known yellow was my favorite color. I thought about that for a moment, the fact that she had remembered, that she had probably bought them specifically, that she had stood in a flower shop and chosen yellow because she was building towards something and she was very good at the small gestures when she was building. I put the flowers in a vase. They were nice flowers. I sat down on my couch and I finished the glass of champagne I had poured 4 nights ago when everything was quiet and good, the glass I had been holding when the elevator opened, and the version of my life I had built very carefully was asked to make room for the version I had left. I thought about what my mother had said, that I had changed, that this wasn't who I was. I thought she was both right and wrong about that. I had changed. But the person I had become was not a departure from who I was. She was the completion of it. The girl who had sat on a bathroom floor for 40 minutes after that kitchen conversation had gotten up and kept going, not because she stopped feeling things, but because she learned to feel things and act clearly at the same time. That's not hardness. That's structure. There's a difference. I know there are people who will hear this story and say I should have turned them away at the door, called security. Ended the conversation before it began. And I understand that. There is a version of strength that looks like a door that doesn't open. But I needed that conversation. I needed to hear my brother explain in detail what he had built and what it had cost him. And I needed to hear my mother use the word value in my living room. And I needed to feel the specific texture of being asked for something by people who had decided I was optional until I became useful. I needed all of that information, not to punish them, to be exact, because being exact is the only way I know how to be free. The promissory note is structured over 7 years. My brother has made every payment on time, which tells me something about him I hadn't known before, that when the consequence is real and unavoidable, he is actually capable of responsibility. I find that more hopeful than the version of him I carried for the previous 4 years. I don't know what we are to each other now. Something new. Something that has honest terms. My mother and I have spoken twice since that afternoon. Both times were brief. There is no warmth in it yet. Maybe there won't be. I've stopped treating that as a problem that needs solving. What I know is this. I raised $4 million. I built something real from a kitchen conversation that was meant to stop me. I learned that the people who love you conditionally will eventually present their conditions. And the best thing you can do when they do is meet them with the same precision they brought to you. My company is growing. My team is good. The penthouse is quiet in the mornings, in a way that still feels like a gift. And every month, on the 15th, an automatic payment hits my account. That's not revenge. That's just excellent financial planning.